Well, thank you for coming to see this week's episode of Tech Tank. I'm Steve Massetta, technical specialist here at Autodesk.
And I'm Jared Krug. I'm the Sales and Channel Readiness for Construction with Autodesk.
And one of the things we're going to talk about today is the use of Autodesk Point Layout, or APL for short, BIM 360 Glue, and BIM 360 Layout, and how the three are intertwined. And to start with, APL it's a plug into our authoring software, our AutoCADs and our Revit and our Revits, and you're set points onto any object, any 3D object in your model, hanger points, HVAC equipment, in-bed locations, edge of slab, wall sleeves, anything that you can actually select in your model, you're able to put a point on. Well, that's for the design, and that's for our 3D digital BIM models, but I think the biggest question is what do we do beyond that? How does that feed into Glue, and how does that feed into Layout?
Yeah, Steve, I think it's, maybe let's take a step back and let's talk about how it's done today. So whether BIM is being used on a project or not, the method of getting these field points for staking on an actual physical job site is a bit of it's still locked in an old way of doing things,
right,
from our perspective. So the process is basically, as you stated, you add points to a model, whether it be an AutoCAD, Revit, or potentially a Navisworks. From there, we have to export out comma separated limited file, sorry, and get that into the data controller. And usually what happens is that file is a dongle, a USB dongle, which is then physically handed over to the foreman, the field foreman, the field crews to go out and stake out those points. And on today's job sites, especially when BIM is being used, a lot of things can change. You know, the architect may come in, the owner may come in and change things. And by the time the field crew is out doing work that was given to them potentially in the morning or the previous evening, design change could have come through.
It's that delay, that ping of where the information is changed and how long does it take to get to the end result, to the person who's actually putting this out in the field. And that's one of the great things that I find, especially using APL, is you can push that information right into Glue. And I think that's where, because you're working with, you have your authoring software, you have Glue, and then you have Layout. And I think that's where the confusion comes into play.
Absolutely. Well, maybe let's debug it a little bit. Let's take a user through that process. So I'm going to actually start in BIM 360 Glue. And for those at home, just suffice to say that we've already added points in a model here, and it's actually, these points are actually created in Navisworks. And because, like Steven said, we have our design applications connected to BIM 360 Glue, which what you're basically looking at is a web client. I've already pulled up this model. This is a small model that we've used. And what I'm able to do is then take that model, once it's actually been connected to BIM 360 Glue with those points, I'm able to then physically come in here and actually create my own point sets. And why is that important? I'm able to create point sets and then share those with the appropriate field crew. So if you're on a big project, it's a bit challenging in the old way of doing it to carve out that file and those points and then separate out to your field crews for the specific scope of work.
Okay.
But now we can actually create a point set here on the fly, and I'll actually show you that. So if you can see here, we've already got some points already set up, but all we do is simply come in and we create a new point set. We're going to give it a couple parameters, right? We want to actually shrink down this. We're going to, and I get to choose the type here. The type is actually brought in from APL. Anything we tag in APL comes up through this process. So I'm going to actually, I want my duct points here, and I want to get those. We can even scrunch this down more. 1 through 2009-19. So our point numbering scheme is actually brought in as well. We're going to search for those. I have 17 duct points have been found. So what I can do then is say, hey, you know what? Let's actually create a point set.
So that's really cool. Imagine if you had multiple stories in a building.
Absolutely.
You could separate that out floor by floor.
Yep.
Help soften that noise and provide those crews focus instead of having to fight through all these different points, and help us mitigate any issues or any losses.
Yeah, and like we said before, it's a timing thing, right? And we're in a live model here. We're working in a live model that could be changing on the back end in Glue. So I've created that duct points team to point set. And it's got a set of points here that we can look at that have been attached to this specific point set. Now, what if I want to share that? I'm not exchanging a dongle with a file. All I'm doing is basically emailing this point set out. I'm going to send it to myself. Let's say I'm a foreman and I want to send it out to my field crew. So that's all I do. I send that email. That email contains a link with a point set. Once I then transfer to BIM 360 layout on the iPad, if I open that email on my iPad, I'm going to switch to BIM 360 layout. If I open the email on my iPad, open up the app, the BIM 360 layout app will open. I will have that point list automatically loaded in my view.
Awesome.
So in exactly the scope of work that I need to go do as one of the field crew. And maybe now's the time we can transition to the actual instrument we have behind us and talk a little bit about that. So in our construction division at Autodesk, we actually have partnered with two different hardware vendors. The one behind us here is a Topcon. It's the DS200i from Topcon. It's a nice instrument with a backside. We've actually got the capabilities here to actually use the prismless feature, which we'll show you.
Fantastic.
We also partnered with Leica as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we have instruments that we can connect directly either through Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to the iPad.
That's pretty excellent. So with Bluetooth, I know that there's a distance limitation.
Correct.
Like Bluetooth in my car, I can get about
Correct.
Maybe 100 feet or so away from it, and all of a
Correct.
sudden, or being 100 feet away, then all of a sudden my car will be on, and all of a sudden the phone will ring, and it's ringing in my car.
Correct.
How do you combat that? How do you get beyond that issue?
Well, I think there's two ways. One, what we're seeing in tests with Bluetooth, about 600 to even 800 meters, with the max range between the instrument and the Bluetooth dongle, which we have. But I think also the other discipline would be to have your survey crew set up multiple control points on a specific floor.
Multiple set of points so that
Absolutely.
you're not getting too far away, because it's not like it's got the same premise as land surveying, where you're dropping points and you're locating things that are actually in a digital 3D coordinate or model on a coordinate system, state plane, or whatever like that.
Exactly.
But in this instance, we're not doing such a vast type of work. We're instead of using a backhoe shovel, we're using just a normal shovel. So
Absolutely.
it has to be a little more accurate and detailed.
Absolutely, and obviously, if it's a large project and you're spanning across deck, you're going to get a lot of interference, either personal interference or RF interference. So you want to shorten those distances as much as you can as possible, and that's kind of what we're going to show you here. Is so on screen we're actually looking at BIM 360 layout, and so this is the exact same model that we were in BIM 360 Glue. But what I can do is, and we'll show you here a little bit, I can actually navigate around in this model. And since I'm using the prismless feature, let's say that I'm a mechanical contractor and I need to go stake out a point that's under deck, let's say a hanger point. I can easily do that. So let's pick one of these points. Let's try to stay away from that object. Scratch it down. We'll choose this point. And what we're going to do here is turn the instrument. It's going to turn, it's going to use the distance system EDM here, and it's actually going to shine a laser point specifically on that spot. And we can go through our model, we can go climb up and spray that, go to the next point, spray it. It's a very quick way to go through points. And remember, this is collected on the iPad. When we finish, when we actually collect this point, you can see that I'm actually collecting this point. It's an as-built, but it's actually it's a staked point. Okay, we're going to save that. Anything I do in this environment, I can then sync back up to the cloud. So my foreman who's back in the trailer can see instant updates if we're connected on progress against this specific scope of work of these points.
That's pretty fantastic. Well, I want to thank Jared for being here with us today, and thank you everybody for watching, and tune in for our next Tech Talk next week.
Thank you.